Testing what?
Not the weapon class. I
Oh.
wasn't sure whether you have it.
Testing 1, 2. Yeah, it's working good. Yeah.
So yeah, just the weapon class. But I tried to look. I don't think you have the mic on.
I didn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So when school start? Thursday after Labor Day? 8th. Yeah. Oh, that's a Wednesday. 8th. September 8th is a Wednesday. Yeah. Because I start Belmont on the 8th. It's a Wednesday. No? Yeah. Might be a 9th. Okay, it's probably 9th then. Ha! Okay, so so September 2nd, masks become mandatory again. That's what they said, fitness centers. But so yeah. But anyways, huh?
What's you're not fit?
Fitness centers?
If you're not fit, does that mean you have to wear a mask?
Probably not. No, actually, it says it says fitness centers. Are we a fitness center though?
I'm not that fit.
Well, actually, they have then on the bottom it says offices that don't have that's not open to the public. They're not. It's not. It's just recommended. It's not mandatory. So, but we'll keep it as a mandatory thing. But because we have very few students come in, it's like we're not really public, huh? But I guess lot of places, supermarkets. I wore a mask today at Whole Foods, even though, they don't really. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wore one in there. So I wear it depending on where I go. But when I come here, I don't have a mask because Noel took my last one. They're coming in tomorrow. I got a mask. I got a mask coming in tomorrow. Yeah. Is Saturday the second? Yeah, Friday. Tomorrow's the first Friday. It becomes, yeah. Yeah. Thursday's the second. Oh yeah, today's the first. Today's the 31st, right? Yeah. First, second. Oh yeah. Thursday. Yeah. Well, I'll have some here anyways if people wanna. It's probably if you're working out the disposable ones actually, unless you wash them all the time. Yeah. Anyways, so what else? Drill time. Sundays. Yeah, so Sundays starting after Labor Day we have a Tai Chi class at 9:30. They're 1-hour classes, and at 10:30 we have a kungfu class, intro and up. It could be mixed. So, we gear the classes to new people, but if there's other people here that don't want to go through the basics, and it's that. And then along with that Tai Chi class, there's going to be a pushing hands class. So anybody who wants to join in on that can join in as a pushing hands class to get some basic experience. So that will start from scratch. I don't know who's going to show up. And it'll be a rotation of instructors. So Sunday will be set up of, we'll set that up. Yeah. So it's, for the instructor group will be 3 people, primary. Anyone else that's here can help out. But so you're not burdened with every Sunday, just in case your family doesn't want you coming out on Sunday. So that'll give you some flexibility. So it'll be on a rotation of the first, second, third. There's 13 weeks to a quarter. So the first week will be the first group, second week will be the set group. So then every first Sunday of a month will be the first group. So you don't have to guess who's. You don't have to memorize it. You're in either group 1, 2, or 3, or 4. And huh? Yeah. Yeah, then if you can't make it, then you swap out with someone else on the following week, or anybody that wants to swap with you. And then that's the simplest way to do it without having to go through all this email stuff and try to find someone, because it's only that group of 10 to 12 people that will be working together. And then we'll work it from there. All right, so let's go through Gung Chi Kun. Oh, you did that already. So let's do it again. Gung Chi Kun. Okay, ready? Gung Chi Kun. Beginning from the beginning. Hup. Okay, deep breathing. Okay, good. So still transitioning through the legs. So let's go to something a little more basic. Then let's go to fourth form, doing the footwork and the transitions, because this is a form that, you know, even when you're teaching it, you want to go back right to the basics and fundamentals. So we'll go through that, and then we'll see if we can figure out what's fundamental. All right, ready? This is fourth form from the beginning. Hup. Go. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. Okay, deep breathing. So we have two ways of opening a horse stance, right? What are the two ways to open a horse stance? Here's the first one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's 3.5 steps. 1, 2. Then, so both of those called opening a stance. So when we pivot here, 1, 2, 3, it's a half, and then down, and then opening a stance from here. First thing is sink, right? This next thing you do is what? Shift. You have to shift your weight, and then spread and sink. So each time you sink here, spread, shift, come in, and then sink again for the hips. So while you're stepping, you can't actually do too much sinking. That's sort of like, you know, then your hips won't be mobile, right? Because if you sink in your stance here and then you keep holding it, then you can't actually open your legs. So you have to, there's a blend of your motions dimensionally, which way it's going and what's going to happen. So when you set up your stance, you're preparing to go into the next motion. So every posture has that same concept, that you have to set it up, then you go through the next motion, and you know the next motion is a transition. So that's going to vary, you know, depends on your skill level, depends on how long you've been doing it, and so forth. So that's going to be a variable among everyone, because everyone's slightly different. But your end goal is to get the integration of your movement and the shifting of weight to be consistent. And then a trapping hand, right? What's important about a trapping hand? right? That this wrist is folded down, back, right? So you have to fold the wrist back like this. You don't want a trapping hand that's loose like this, because once the hand rolls like this, you create your structure, right? If you let your hand just go like this, then it's really just loose. So you don't have structure integrity of the position. So you have to turn, so that creates sort of, you're flexing the wrist a bit, but it creates the integrity of your block. Just like in a dragon claw, if you're like this, you have no strength in the forearm. So the dragon claw, the strength is in the forearm. It's the forearm center block. So it's a mid-range block. And without this, you don't have this, right? So we learned that from pushing forward and our forearm tenses. But a tense forearm in motion is different from a tense forearm than when you're like this. Because if you just do this and you tense your arm, you try that, right? Just go out there and just tense your arm, right? So try to move. You can't. Why can't you move? Because you have tension. If you want to, the first thing you have to do is relax, and then you move. You relax, and then you move. So movements is balance and motion. You have to control that. So the better you control it, the better your movement's going to be. So how much should you use? You know, that's a question that has to be answered when you're doing Tai Chi and they say don't use strength. Or you're doing kungfu and they said don't use strength. So what do they mean? It's not that you don't use strength. You have to use the correct amount of strength. So that's what you're learning. When you regulate your movement, when you control your direction of movement, it actually is controlling your strength, right? And what is strength? It's your muscular contraction. So if you want to lift something heavy, you use a lot more contraction, right? So the more you lift, say even with weights, the more muscles you recruit and the stronger contraction you have. When you're in movement, you don't need a lot of strong contraction. You need time contractions, and it has to be sequential contraction. So those type of things is learned through our dynamic movement. When we move, we learn to use our strength, and we learn to control the amount, the speed, and all of, you know, the direction of that. And because the body is so three-dimensional, multi-dimensional, all of these components have to be controlled. That's why we have so much trouble figuring it out. And the reason we can't figure it out is because the body doesn't know it. In fact, the mind doesn't even know it because you don't know what you're watching for. So if the body doesn't do something that you're familiar with and you've never seen it or never done it, then you can't even see what you think you're trying to do. It's as, you know, that's the simple explanation for why people can't pick up on certain things. Because after 5 years of practice, you will say, oh, I didn't know that was happening, or I didn't see that. And the reason why you didn't see it is because you didn't know to look for it. So, you know, it's just experience and time. So it's not something you can pick up, you know, just by watching. That's why, you know, when a lot of teachers get a little bit paranoid about what, you know, people see, you can't really see it if you don't know what you're looking for on the advanced level, on the higher skill level. Yeah, and even if you told that person how to do it, they don't come back doing it. Why? Because they don't know, the body doesn't know what you're talking about. So it's much more complex than people really realize. That's not to the people that are practicing, it's to the novice that's watching. They don't know what they're watching, and they don't know what so they can't appreciate it, you know. So that's, you know, that's it kind of in a nutshell. But for us as practitioners, for the long-term practitioner, what are you looking for? Integration of body, control of those movements, regulating your speed and timing. It's that. And ultimately, if you can do all of these things as you're supposed to, then your body will get, you know, tremendous circulation, tremendous control, and efficiency and naturalness of motion. So that's really, for us, the end goal is really naturalness of motion. If you can develop naturalness of motion, then everything is in line with the principles, the concepts. So a naturalness of motion is not easy to find because we don't know what is natural, right? Just like when you say relax, we don't really know what's relaxing other than the term, but relaxing is to let go. Let go of the mind. That's what you would probably tell people to relax, clear your mind, and don't worry about it, right? But that's just a way of explaining to someone using that kind of a concept. But really, for us, it's releasing tension in the joints. So we call it fong song, release the tension. By releasing tension, you begin to create movement. Without releasing, you can't create movement. So that's like this. You have tension in the hands and every joint in here. Doesn't mean there's no strength, but there's no functionality to this other than being rigid. So we try to avoid being rigid by being fluid, right? So there's the opposite. But being too fluid is no good. You have to have a balance. You have to have a balance. You have to have balance in motion. So while this is fist on the elbow, when you step out, you turn and you sink. Now sinking, there's a time to sink and there's a time to not sink, right? What's not sinking? Floating, right? Floating, right? The opposite of sinking is floating, right? So that's called foul, when it floats. So when do you float? When you rise. When you float, when you let go, when do you sink? When you drop, and downward directions. So movements are directional, and you have to control not only the spatialness of motion, you have to control the shape, the form, the direction, and all of those tie together in the geometry position. The circle, the oblique, these are angular movements. The timing between this space, and that space, your control of that space and the regulation of the speed, power, and position is controlled by how much you do this, how much you do this, how much you lean. All of that becomes sensitivity to your movement. So that becomes awareness. So in Zhenjiang, when we're here, when we do this cross here, we lift up. That's a thrust. That's directional. You pull back, and you go down. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so right. So those 4 movements, by just watching it, you're doing a sequence, right? You remember this. It goes up, it goes back, it goes down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So that's what you memorize as a sequence. But when you sink, when the hand goes up, you have to sink. That means when the hand goes up, you have to create an equal opposite reaction. When you draw back, you have to open your chest, and then you release the chest. Now, this is what's interesting. Everybody just does this. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Right? And then you could do it like that. Right? And you turn. Okay, so how about doing it like this? When the hand gets to here, right? Use the backward draw as the upward pressure. So when you put upward pressure on the hand, right? Now you feel a connection to the other side, right? You feel the connect. Now you feel that. Now you're not just wiping off your arm like you had dust on it. You're actually connecting the two sides. Now you have a feeling of up and down, up and down, up and down. So that same idea is when you go like this, while you're pushing down, your hand is pushing up, and now you have the equal opposite reaction, and you have something else you added to it. You added a dimension of pressing and down, so that now you have a force created by that. But it's not, the force is not so strong that and stiff that once you start to press, you get stuck. It's because it's fluid, right? So when you're here, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, then you're, right? So the first time is your right hand's on top, then you draw, 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 and then over. That's how you create the direction of force and the way it looks. Because while everybody's doing it, you didn't realize that look is different from what you're doing. Now, if you watch him do it the way you were doing it, so you see how that is, right? Is it good? Good for him. But actually, he's too straight. He's too straight. There's no angular motion crossing the arm like an X block. And then because you're not staying here, only here, now the movement looks different. So, yeah. So it's the. See, when you thrust, this is here, right? Now this is up, up. So the focus, the movement is actually the underhand rather than the upper hand. Try it. So the upper hand is really the side that's doing more of the movement than the thrust. If you're going to remove, right? If you're going to remove, this is the hand that you're removing from, right? If he grabs this hand, I'm not just doing this. I'm doing this. This hand is coming back. So this is the hand, not this. So when you want to someone grabs your wrist, it's not this, it's this. The pullback is the.
So the first setup here, the right hand is going to grab.
Well, yeah. So the right hand is to create the preparation to prepare for this motion, and then you're here, and then when you're here, then you go back to here to finish the other side of the X block. Yeah. So when you do it, it's too angular, so you have to be more like this. But then fold the elbow a little bit. Yeah. So now you have so if you look in the mirror and you straighten your elbows, right? Straighten your elbows. It's always going to be like that, right? If you fold the elbow a little bit, now that you create the cross connection to that low position.
So that's the position.
That's the position. So when you do this, it's not
My elbows were straight.
like this. So if you lock your elbows like this, then you become rigid and you actually create the wrong geometry of position. Because this is your bridge, and when I go like this or like this. So here's the other thing. If I go like this, extend like this, and I want to move my hand, I can't do this. I have to do this. And then do this, right? You see, I break he feels that. See, this is pulling, this is broken. Now the movement has changed. The direction of forces have changed, right? So if I go like this, and I go like this, and I go like this, then that changes the direction of. So that's how your skeletal structure is manipulated, right? So this is what we learn aside from movement. Sequential learning is really just memory. You can memorize a song, memorize a poem, memory. But after you memorize it, could you move? No. You have to memorize movement and then explain to your body what you want it to do. And then what you're explaining to the body is what you picked up, whether it's visually or sequential events. And then you'll teach your body, well, this is what's going on. Right? And then you open and fold. So this is what fundamental patterns are, fundamental movement. When I'm square, I'm here. When I'm oblique or slanted or round, this is what's going on when we're talking about shapes and patterns. So the patterns of movement, are throughout the form. Sequential pattern, and then posturing patterns. This and this and this is a pattern. It's a shape, right? This is a circular movement. This is an oblique movement. This is a cutting hand. Each one of those patterns are in a different plane, depending on whether your body can track it. That's your spatial awareness. And tracking that and the direction of those movements has to do with proprioception has to do with joint angle position, and it has to do with being familiar with the movement and where it's going, right? So if I'm here, this is like this. If he punches to here, it's like this, you see. If he punched again, it could go to middle. If it comes again, it could come to center, and it could cut, right? So the connection between this is right and left connections. When I go like this, my hand is here. When he strokes, my hand goes here, right? If he comes to here, my hand goes here. When he comes to here, my hand goes here. So this actually knows what to do with every response and every action. But it's not just random. It's actually programmed into your system. Because if you watch the form, there's no hand that moves independently on its own. It only moves independently when you're first learning it, because you're looking at the dominant hand. You don't look at the secondary hand, because the secondary hand isn't something you're paying attention to, because you don't know that that's happening. But then when you bring in the secondary hand, you forget the dominant hand, and then you get confused. Now, when you do this, then this one's out of place. So not until the movements end up in your subconscious that actually you can start working on the secondary hand, and then the third hand, and the fourth hand. So all of that stuff is a process. It's all happening up here. And when you develop this, then this actually will, condition this, will format that. So that's all we're doing, really. But it takes decades. I don't want to scare you, but it takes decades. But you have a few more years than I do, so, what? No, not. No, but that's why, it takes a long time for these kind of things, things that we're talking about. Because, when you first started, it doesn't matter. Even let's just say you start when you're, a teenager. You might not get into this mode of thinking till you're 30 years old. Because between teenager and 30, your mind is dominated by another level of thought, right? You get other things on your mind. You're not thinking about how refined my movement can be. But when you get to this age, and then you start, and you've practiced this long, then you kind of change your whole approach to how you look at things. How do I know that? Because I went through all those ages and still did the same thing. I'm not doing things today as I did when I was 25. And I'm not doing things today, I did it when I was 45. Because, I've evolved with it. It's part of aging, it's part of insightfulness, and it's part of that, that journey. So it's just the way, old teachers end up knowing so much more. It's just that not a lot of people do this like this as long as I've done it, or done it like some of the other older masters. But it's just, it's part of the course, and just want you to know that that's what happens, and that's why you stay with it. Okay, so anything else in fourth form? What? Yeah. Kungfu? Yeah.
Sometimes there's a sliding step, sometimes you're just going right into it.
Yeah.
If you go right into it, is it still there's that sync?
Yeah. So it should be kind of a sliding step in every one. Yeah. Sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. But when you're learning it, obviously it's 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's 1, 2. So the reason, let's say the additional sliding step is the secondary action. It's the next action, because you train yourself to make that step. Because if you only practice here and you're not familiar with making that step or taking that step, you won't take that step, because it's not automatic. You want it to be a subconscious action. So while we're doing like this, 1, turn, and then get your leg. When you use it, you might just be going through it just directly like that, because you can't For training, you go through the whole process of the breakdown because those are the phases. When you go through the phases of those movements, then you define what has to connect when as a relationship and a cross-referencing of those motions. But when he throws a punch, you're like this. You're ready to strike and block at the same time practically, but it's not the same time. It's actually sequential. There's an order for this to block as passing from my horse, passing from this, right, to this. You see, now when you apply the movement, you're not going to do this. That's what we do in the form. In application, you block and then you strike, because from here, you're going to strike again or again or again. Because everything that we learn is to move from where we left off. So where did we move from where we left off? That's your setup, right? So if I go like this, that's one movement. That's my second movement. I know this, that's one. I know this. Those are two different movements. But when I go like this and this, my hand knows here, it goes to here. But we also know this, right? In Fu Hak, we go like this. So if I go like this, then from here, it goes here. Then from here, it would go there in an application. So if I went like this, and I went like this, then it goes like this. You see, it just goes from here because that's something I've learned. And then depending on where the opening, say he came up top, then this might go there. Because, you know, for every time an opponent moves, and when he moves, there's an opening here or here, right? So those in here as a connection, right? But if you go in blindly and you just go in and crash the legs, then you're just kind of tripping yourself up. So that's why when you make your step, you're here. So when I'm stepping, this one's light. I'm not just going like this. So the sliding step is the first. This is going light and then in as a secondary part of the step. So you know, fundamental training is teaching you fundamentals, basic structure, and patterns, right? And then from that stage, you got to go into the next stage of the posturing and correct the posture. Where do the hands go? Center line. One's upper, one's lower. Solar plex. Reference points. All your reference points have to be accurate. When you go into that position, yeah. So this one should be down a little higher than this one, like this, because you sink.
This is lower?
Oh, because your body form is like this. Because if you don't go like this and sink, then you're up like this and you don't have upper body strength. So you have to grip the hands so you're here. See, so you have strength here, right? Mm-hmm. You have, because your position, your reaction would be, right? Sink. So is your reaction your arm or your body?
Body.
Or your stance? Should be a combination of all, right? So you sink. So if I'm here, right, and I just turn, depending on how much I want to avoid, you would respond. If someone throws a punch and it's about to hit you, you can respond, right? Because your body reacted. You know, like you're going to punch me in the shoulder, it's going to hit me in the shoulder. I could take the whole thing and just get my shoulder whacked, or it comes in and then your shoulder can yield a bit because it felt it coming. Your body will respond like that. So, yeah, so it's really, your body kind of will know to react, but it doesn't know to react if it's stiff or tight, overly tight. So, you know, these are just, you know, principles and concepts. So they're actually, so it's not perfectly straight, it's really a little like this. See, just flare out just a little. And then you don't turn too much because you don't want to expose here. Right? So that's your body form with defensive positioning. So that's why when you go back, don't do it like this because you're totally exposed there. Don't do it with your arms out like this because you left an opening. It has to be at least covered. So when from your here, you have to drop and then you become vertical like this. So are both of them exactly the same? No, they're not the same. The look's the same. The intensity of the strength is not the same. Double weighted. One side has strength. So the front side should be the one. This arm should be the one that has structure, but it doesn't mean that that's the one that's moving. It could be this one that's moving. This one could be passive action, creating this, because in motion you're committed. In positioning, it has structure, and the movement is from the rest of your body. So my hand is tense here, and it goes like this, and I turn it, it's there. If I pull down, it's in the leg, but the intensity of this is the same. It's just there. But depending, if I go like this, then my intent is there. When it sinks, then the intent is there and there. So I'm not pulling, but I'm sinking, and it feels like I'm pulling. Yeah. So you have a double, double dose of strength going in multi-dimension. So we have a lot of this. It's sink the elbow, relax the shoulder. And then you turn from here to a different plane, the oblique plane in the torso, the side body position. So in functional motion on your action, when you're here or you're here, your chest is very important. Because the mobility of chest, if I'm punching at his chest, right? If I punch at his chest, when he moves his chest, even if he gets hit in his chest, the impact's not going to be as direct. If he just, all he knew was going forward and back, if he comes forward, boom, and he gets hit in the chest, it's just a square chest move strike, and it's going to be much more, impact on his chest because it's 90 degrees to the force. If he turns a little bit when he blocks, and even if he missed the block, it's going to glance. That's all it's going to do. But if your chest is flexible or sensitive, then you might even roll and hollow at the same time. Yeah. So that's what your body develops as a sensitivity to movement, right? So when you do the opening, closing, the rounding, and the squaring of the body, that's what happens. So the body form is very important to develop, the efficiency of movement. But the body forms only develop if your body knows it or knows to move. So that's, at this stage, you should probably try to incorporate more integration of hand and leg and right and left, and how the quadrants of your torso is, activated. So it's a lot to learn, but, I think that's why you're here, right? Okay, so we'll bow. Hup. And that's why we have such few students, because no one wants to listen to this.